Once again, got the microphone sorted out this time. Now, today's video, we're going to talk about TRT, or Testosterone Replacement Therapy, which a lot of people seem to go to before they necessarily even need to do it. Now, I've spoken about HRT, which is more referred to as the female side of things, but TRT is hormone replacement therapy once again. And TRT, HRT, however we look at it, is used kind of for a form of anti-aging. And I get the reasons why people think that we need to go down this route or that the hormones are a problem, but usually the hormones are an end result, a result of signaling issues within the brain and anything like that. Now, I've got my notes here because I want to make sure that I go through the depths of what we really need to look at. But what is important to realize that this video is for entertainment purposes only. If you are going to go ahead and implement any of the things or dive deeper into the things in this video, then please consult a functional medicine doctor, a healthcare physician, or whoever you want to look at, a professional in the field to get your individual approach. If you want to come to me and have a chat with me, have a call, then please drop me a message and we can arrange that to have a look further into your individual situation. Now, as we said, the hormones are an end result. Usually there's something else going on before then, and most hormone problems that I see as a functional medicine doctor are things that are going on in our brain with regards to the control point, a thing called a hypothalamus, the central control area that signals the rest of the body in most areas and production of hormones. And disruption of these processes usually comes down to many different things. Things like toxin exposure, things like gut health issues, things like adrenal issues and stress issues that we are overly stressed in the environment that we're in, and also things like blood sugar dysregulation. Now, it's kind of backwards if we go to really attack the hormones first off, because yes, I've seen many people think they've been fixed with this, and then they get a few years down the line and those issues that have been happening, they've still got the toxin exposure. So their liver isn't functioning as effectively, or their gut isn't as effective as it could be, or they're still highly stressed, overtraining and all these sorts of things. So they get those issues happen once again. So in order to look at how we fix this, we need to look at how hormones are made. And the first thing, as I've mentioned, is the hypothalamus. Hopefully you can read my writing. Now, this is the central control port of the brain. Basically, this is where everything is going to take place. It's in the brain. And what happens here is we get neurotransmitters like our central nervous system, our immune system, and our hormones around the body are going to signal the hypothalamus to spring into action. So if we look at nervous system, immune, can't spell, hormones. Now, these are going to input into the hypothalamus to say you need to release something called gonadotropin releasing hormone. So GnRH. Now, that sends a signal down to the pituitary gland. Now, this is where we need to first off get these signals right. Now, what happens there? This pituitary gland gets the gonadotropin releasing hormone, the GRH, to send signals to say we need to release luteinizing hormone or follicular stimulating hormone. If you've watched my menopause video, if you've watched my thyroid video, you will know this is coming in to being an axis. And this is going to be the HPG axis, the hypothalamus pituitary gonad axis, which is actually going to go to the testes. Now, this releases FSH and LH, luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone. Now, when these get released, this will be sperm and a thing called spermatogenesis, which is basically going to release sperm within the body. And in the body, you know where it gets released. Luteinizing hormone releases or helps the production of testosterone. So first off, we can see if we've got issues here, we're going to potentially signal the wrong luteinizing hormone. Now, what we need to look at is cholesterol levels first off, because when they send the signals to the testes to produce testosterone or sperm, there are stored levels of cholesterol in here. Now, cholesterol gets demonized a hell of a lot. And when we look at cholesterol levels within clients, we see that potentially people now in their late 30s, in their 40s and 50s that have followed high levels of low fat diets, or the media has said that cholesterol levels are bad. We can't have cholesterol, can only eat one egg a day, and these sorts of things. We start to see problems in hormones as a result because they do not have the cholesterol. If they are not that stressed, then we should still be able to produce hormones with low cholesterol. But we do not need to be demonizing cholesterol. When we look at cholesterol, can't spell again, and it's involved in many different pathways. Like cholesterol comes down and makes a thing called pregnenolone. Then from there, pregnenolone is going to go one of two ways. We convert that into progesterone. And then progesterone will make, I'm not going to go into what these things do. I'm just going to pop them down here because it's not important to know exactly what these things do. It's important to know the processes to see where we may have deficiencies and why we need to look a little bit deeper. It will also look at cortisol production. Then pregnenolone could also go into DHEA production. If you've ever done a cortisol test or hormone test, you'll see cortisol and DHEA on there. Then that can actually go to androstenedione. So we'll pop the andro here because I really screwed up my actual methods here. Then that can convert into test, but it can also then convert into DHT, dihydrotestosterone, testosterone, and that can then, testosterone could be made into estrogen. I don't want to go deeper into the science of all this, but I just want you to understand this is quite an in-depth pathway for us to look into, with that if we don't have enough cholesterol levels into our testes, we're not going to be able to produce the right hormones that we need to, because then we don't have the right pregnenolone. Without the right pregnenolone, we don't have the right progesterone. We don't have the right DHEA or androsterone or aldosterone or cortisol or testosterone or DHT or estrogen and all these different things. Now, each of these pathways, they need different enzymes to work. So if we have deficiencies in these enzymes, we then have problems that we're going to then have issues with converting these different hormones from cholesterol. But if first off we have problems with cholesterol, we're going to see issues there. So what actually else happens? Now, enzymes, as I say, are needed to convert that. We then have to get into how do we, let me rub the cholesterol bit off. Again, if you have watched the thyroid hormone video or the menopause video or anything like that, you will know that we have these little Uber-like taxi things called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. Now, what happens is when the testosterone is produced in the testes and we get the signal in and everything works well, that is free testosterone. Now, this can actually be used around the body, which we think is great. We have high free testosterone. But if we didn't have SHBG, these taxis to grab that testosterone and bind it and take it around the body, we would then end up using the testosterone all around our testes. So we want to make sure that we get this around the body where it can be used effectively. So if someone's got low SHBG, then we're not going to be able to get that testosterone around the body. We're probably going to see that it's being used up elsewhere. So we have signs of problems with testosterone as well. Now, bound hormones cannot be used. So we need to get the testosterone from free to bound. Then we need to get them back to free. Now, what actually happens here is that we have to, a lot of the conversion and things like going for bound is done within the liver, it's done within the testes, but we need to get them to the cells where we can convert those hormones. Now, one of the problems we have is that if we have excess fat and we have then had things called aromatase, we're then going to convert some of the free testosterone that has now been bound, we can potentially convert that to estrogen, which can be an issue. So then we see higher estrogen and lower testosterone. In guys, this is a problem. Now, we also need to make sure is that a lot of the conversion is going to be done in different organs with regards to the liver, with the kidneys, with the gut. We need to have good function within these issues, in these places as well. So if we don't get good levels of SHBG, we're going to lose testosterone there. We're going to use it up to, like, if we have too much, then potentially we're going to just bind too much and not use it again. Now, what happens when we have that is that we have, as we said, conversion, then we have to get into clearance. So if conversion, we want to make sure we're converting it into free testosterone again, where it can then go into the cells and do its job. Now, once we've done that, as we said, the clearance, sorry, I got sidetracked, left the window open, and it's telling me the world, like, news for the World Cup. Anyway, yeah, so we need to get the conversion done. And once we do that, we need to look at clearance. My writing is terrible. I'm blaming it being a left-hander. Now, clearance, this is where a lot of people have issues, is that we need good liver function. And many people have hormonal issues because they don't have good liver function. So I look at a client's history when it comes to drug use, when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to stimulants, when it comes to stress levels, when it comes to toxin exposure. And if we can improve their liver function, 9 times out of 10, we improve their hormone function because we're able to clear out hormones as a result. And then after that, they can then act directly on the cell. And in the cell, you have the mitochondria, you have the nucleus, the different organelles within there. Now, where do we have these issues? Well, the first off, we need to look at the hypothalamus. And with the hypothalamus, first thing is that with a lot of guys, a little bit more than women, is that this nervous system, putting neurotransmitters in there, is that we have dopamine problems. So don't know if you can see that properly, but having dopamine issues becomes a massive problem, because if we don't have the right level of neurotransmitters going in there, we don't first get the signaling in there. Dopamine has been linked with problems with releasing gonadotropin releasing hormone, and as a result, they potentially, like, there's issues. That another thing to test for is prolactin. I haven't mentioned that, but prolactin has definitely been shown to inhibit testosterone levels. Now, if we think back to the amount of people nowadays that have ADHD or have attention problems, or like they just burn through dopamine, we have addictive tendencies, we scroll them through Facebook all the time, through Instagram, we're just looking for the next hit after hit, getting shiny object syndrome, we're looking for that dopamine hit. These are signs that we're constantly burning through dopamine and we need more and more and more. Now, if we're not getting the dopamine into our system to actually stimulate the hypothalamus, we're not going to get the gonadotropin releasing hormone. So we're going to have issues there. Now, we can then also have that if these aren't going right, the pituitary gland could be exposed to excess stress. Now, if you look at I believe I've done a video on cortisol when I talk about the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And we look at how this then dysfunctions with too much cortisol, mixing the hypothalamus messages up to the pituitary gland. We then have problems there, that this pituitary gland then stops stimulating enough luteinizing hormone. And this then means that the testes aren't signaled to produce testosterone as the way we want it. Now, this could be that pituitary issue. It could also be high levels of cortisol, as we mentioned. It could be the stress physiology within the body. It could be inflammation. They're all going to be big causes of this. And some things that we have nowadays is problems with sleep. If you're waking up through the night, or if you've got poor circadian rhythm, this could be adding to this. One thing that people that train in general do not like to be told is that they're training too much. And I've seen that many, many times, including myself over the years. There were testosterone issues because they were stressed out from too much training. Then we look on the other hand is that people that don't train maybe think that they don't need to be training, and they need to be training. We need to get that balance right when it comes to getting enough stress but not having too much. Now, we can have a look at if luteinizing hormone is showing up as too high. There could be a thing called LH resistance, luteinizing hormone resistance. And basically, it's that the signaling isn't getting into the testes to stimulate the testosterone. Or it could be the dysfunction within the testes. That could be an issue. There could be something like dysbiosis. There could be excess lipopolysaccharide exposure, chemical exposure, maybe things like hypergonadism and a dysfunction within the testes. But what we do know is that excess exposure to chemicals is the testes are very, very sensitive. Like I'm pretty certain you've been kicked there or hit there or accidentally hit them against something. They're very sensitive. And that's the same with exposure to chemicals. Now, if we look, and all joking aside, we look in the homes we live in, how many of you guys have got mold in your home? How many of you guys have had candles which have so many chemicals in that we're burning these toxins into the air? Have you thought about the air quality that is in the home that you live in? Opening the windows, getting good airflow, getting air purifiers in there. Then we look at BPAs in the drinks that we have. We look at the plastic exposure for the bottles, the Tupperware, the things like that we have our food in. Then BPAs on receipts, all these different things. They're all going to be exposure to chemicals. Then we look, there's studies that show farmers or golf course groundsmen that their exposure to chemicals are showing lower sperm count and problems with fertility, even autoimmune conditions because of their toxin exposure. It's something that we don't want to underplay. These are definitely things that could be going on. As a result, testosterone issues become a massive result. Then we can look at the SHBG levels, the sex hormone binding globulin levels. Now, too high is meaning that there's going to be lowered free testosterone because we're going to be binding too much. Usually, the cause of this, hence why it's good to get a full blood panel, the cause of this is usually going to be high levels of estrogen. Now, why? Is it a signaling issue? Is it too much body fat? You'll probably find that it's harder to lose body fat when we have too much estrogen. Too low is basically meaning that the testosterone is being used too quickly and too freely around the testes. Now, usually that's due to high testosterone. So we need to look at why is it high testosterone and why is it being used there, which is then showing up as problems with testosterone elsewhere in the body and getting symptoms of low testosterone. Now, there's also, as we said, the aromatase side of things can mean that there's too much conversion into other things, like estrogen, from aromatase, due to high body fat, due to chemical exposure, due to excess stress. And that's when people will have a hard time losing weight. The liver, as we've said, is a big function when we look at what could go wrong. So if someone's had high levels of alcohol, liver function, kidney function, detoxification processing, there's different phases of detoxification, and phase 1 and phase 2 is where we actually clear these toxins out. So we use these hormones and then we need to clear them out so we don't have excess buildup within the system. So we need to look at liver function. Now, I've seen people come to me with really low liver function, a history of alcohol use, a history of drug use. We've given it a few months of really lowering their stress, supporting their liver function first off. And this will take a few different protocols. And I'm not a functional medicine doctor that will just say you need to have protocol after protocol after protocol. We need to make sure the foundations are in place with nutrition, some basic supplementation, with movement, with circadian rhythm. Then we can look at protocols, or you can look at testing and all these different things. But looking at protocols to help with liver function, I've seen people drastically change their hormonal status in 6 to 12 months. People that were literally about to go on TRT. I've had a woman come to me, going down the female side of things, whose doctor had said she was going through early menopause at 34 years old, look at improve her liver function, pulled back from training so much. She was literally like running most days, and we had to look into why, the psychology of it. She then was able to have another baby a few years later, and it is awesome. Like, not to do with me with that part, but she was able to really improve her health by looking at her liver function and look at her stress levels. So I would look at speaking to your practitioner about liver support as well. Then we look at the ability to get into the cell. There's a phospholipid bilayer around here, which is basically a fatty bilayer. Now, hormones are going to be like, because cholesterol is fat soluble, it's going to be able to get in here, work on the nucleus, other organelles like ribosomes with the mitochondria as well. So we need to have good cellular health. And this is where, if someone has perfectly fine bloods, but they have normal testosterone or this sort of stuff, but they still have symptomology of low testosterone, low sex drive, struggle to lose weight, low energy, low drive, or just motivation, this is where I'd look deeper at cellular health. Now, we know that the basis of a healthy body requires good cellular function. If we have good cellular function, we have good tissue function, we have good organs, we have good organ systems, which means we become good organisms and healthy human beings, which means healthy population and healthy communities. Now, this is where we need to look. We need to look at the gut health. Last bit on here. I've gone through a hell of a lot, and this is just showing how much of a geek I am. Gut health. We need a healthy gut to help with our hormone signaling and hormone conversion and things like that. We need to reduce inflammation, and that is going to be stress levels as well. Stress levels for our physical stress, too much exercise, too little exercise, nutritional stress, which is going into the physical stress with poor blood glucose management, processed food, not a lot of nutrients, poor diversification in our gut microbiome. These things are massively linked, so we need to improve these things. Then we can look at an individual supplement protocol, so add the right supplements in there. Is it going to be supplements that help with methylation, supplements that help with lowering inflammation, so things like resveratrol, turmeric, glutathione? Again, these aren't specific recommendations for you, but dive into these things. Are there deficiencies in zinc and magnesium? Have you got problems with cholesterol levels? These are the areas I would look at. Looking at your routine. Hydration. You can improve these things. You can massively, massively improve these things without the need for TRT. Now, the problem is these things do take time. When you do improve these things, if you've been in a stressful state for 20 years, 30 years, if one of the stresses was trauma through childhood, that we've now managed to send you to the right therapist in order to help that, maybe a hypnotherapist, a psychologist, a counselor, whatever it is, to unravel that stuff. And now we've taken that stress off the body, these things do take time to improve. So absolutely, yes, we can fix these things. Then we need to test and test again to see where are these levels now going. But one of the things I would look at is that if your testosterone levels are low, and maybe you're getting testing every 6 months or 12 months or 3 months, whatever it is you want to do, but don't expect them to jump from, say they were at 500 and now they're at 300, and that's happened over 2 years. The goal is to start that rise going up. So they're not going to jump straight back to 500 necessarily, unless it was an infection that we got rid of the infection and now it's back to complete normal and it wasn't excessive stress over a long period of time. That could happen. But we want to look at getting it from that 300. Maybe it's going to 350. 6 months down the line, it's going to 410 and so on. That it's on the right trajectory. Because then you know you are improving your health. And remember, over age, we do have potentially lowered levels of testosterone. But this is just a video to say that the testosterone isn't necessarily the answer. This is something where that is usually the outcome. We need to look at the inputs. Look at the hypothalamus, the pituitary. Look at those stress levels around your body. Look at those issues there. And these things can be fixed. They do, however. This isn't a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day challenge. They do take patience. And they will take some, they will be frustrating at times, but they can absolutely be fixed. If you want help with this, drop me a message. Go to ojayhealth.com and we can set up a time to chat. You could go ojhealth.com/virtual coffee, but there's a contact me form on there, and I'll get back to you. Let's bounce some questions around, and let's see how we can truly help you. If you're literally at the end of your tether when it comes to testosterone replacement, and you haven't looked into all the things in here, let's talk and see how we can truly improve your health. First thing I would look at, if you don't want to jump on a call, I have a presentation called Is This Burnout? Now, it sounds completely off topic, but a lot of the things we go at in there are going to be signs of low testosterone. And if you can improve these things, you're going to drastically improve your health and see some massive, massive, massive improvements for the better. So if you want to look at that presentation, totally free, go to www.ojayhealth.com/burnout. Now, hopefully you've taken something from this. Thank you for watching.